Hello, and welcome to Kloeker's Education Foundation, where we provide quality content for amazing teachers and students. If you're joining us from a previous video or previous series, welcome back. And if this is your first time, we're glad you're here. This is our World History series, and this lesson is on the Persian Wars. Before we get started, don't forget to check out the links in the description below for resources on Teachers Pay Teachers and a free graphic organizer to go along with this lesson. Now let's dive in. This lesson is divided into three parts: the Battle of Marathon, the Battle of Thermopylae, and the Battle of Salamis. We have one major essential question as we look at the Persian Wars, and that is, who were the Persians and in what ways did their actions impact the life in ancient Greece? And so, by the end of this lesson, we should be able to write a brief paragraph explaining what occurred at the Battle of Marathon or Thermopylae and why it was important to Greek history. So as we go through each section, here's our plan of attack. The 5 W's. Who, what, when, where, and why. Who was fighting who, where were they fighting, why were they fighting, when, and what happened. Now, at the Battle of Marathon, this is the Persian army led by King Darius of Persia versus the Athenian army. King Darius launches a massive invasion into ancient Greece to expand his empire. Outside the city of Athens, there's a marshy plain known as the Plain of Marathon. This is where the battle takes place. As you can see from this map, Darius's forces have crossed most of ancient Greece and have made it very close to Athens, one of the leading cities of ancient Greece. Now, why are the Persians there? King Darius simply wanted to expand his empire and conquer ancient Greece. It was a source of pride, wealth, and knowledge that he wanted to include in the Persian Empire. And so this is one of his first invasions. He launches into ancient Greece in 490 BC. While you may not have heard of the Battle of Marathon up until this point, you may have heard of a marathon, a race, if you will, and this comes from Phidippides, who was an Athenian soldier who ran from Marathon to the city of Athens to report the news of the victory and that the Persians were on the run and may try to attack the city, but he was coming to tell them that they had won the battle, and upon delivering this news, he collapsed and passed away after running 26 miles, nearly 40 kilometers in full body armor. And so the spoiler alert, Athens won the Battle of Marathon. Now this is portrayed at the end of 300 slightly with a brave charge of the Spartans and the Athenians to defeat Xerxes. That is not the case. As a matter of fact, the Spartans were not even at the Battle of Marathon. They were engaged in a religious ceremony and refused to participate in the conflict. The Athenians won the battle because they broke with traditional ancient tactics and decided to charge the enemy, charge the Persians as they were offboarding from their boats. This is one of the first recorded charges in ancient history, and by charging, I mean they viciously ran full speed at the enemy instead of staying in a formed phalanx and trying to fight in a traditional sense. And so the Athenians, breaking with military tradition, have a huge victory, decimate and slaughter 2/3 of King Darius's army, and put off the Persian invasion for many years. And so we begin our second portion of this lesson, and that is the Battle of Thermopylae. Our plan of attack, the 5 W's, as it was in the first section: who, where, why, when, and what happened. Who was fighting who, where, why, when did it happen, and of course, what happened or transpired at the battle. The Battle of Thermopylae happens as King Xerxes is leading his ground forces into ancient Greece once again, and he comes into conflict and combat with King Leonidas, one of the kings of Sparta, and his 300 Spartan soldiers at a mountain pass known as Thermopylae, which translates to the hot gates. You may have heard of thermal clothing, which is clothing to keep you warm. That comes from the ancient Greek, therm, meaning hot. Now, there is a Hollywood movie known as 300 about the Spartans and the combat at the Battle of Thermopylae, and they have King Xerxes shown on the left. However, historically, this is nothing what he looked like. He looked more like the photo and the painting on the right, with a heavy beard and wearing much more clothing than portrayed in the movie. In the Hollywood movie 300, King Leonidas is played by Gerald Butler. You can see him there, pictured left, shirtless with a cape, looking fierce, ready to fight the Persians. And Renaissance artists have painted pictures of the Battle of 300, and you can see one of those renditions of that on the right, King Leonidas, still looking fierce, also shirtless with a cape on. However, this is a fact that was added in for dramatic effect. The Spartans fought in heavy armor. They had torso plates. They had helmets on. They did not fight shirtless in cloth underwear and a shield. They had heavy-duty armor on. We just wanted to put him shirtless in a picture for dramatic and cinematic effect, and historians and artists in the Renaissance era painted them naked or shirtless because it was supposed to show bravery and courage. Both of those are false. They fought with heavy armor. Don't let that mislead you. And so this battle takes place in 480 BC, 10 years after King Darius's first invasion of ancient Greece. You can see how narrow that pass is from historical paintings. It is not a very large area in order to have an army move through, especially when you're trying to fight fierce warriors on the other side. So King Xerxes, ready and eager to defeat them, goes into Greece, trying to avenge the loss at Marathon that happened 10 years earlier, trying to avenge that of his father in the second invasion, and comes into contact with these Spartans. So what happened at the battle? Now, King Leonidas is there with thousands of other Greeks. I know in the movie he is there with just his troops, and there's a few others that show up. There were thousands of Greeks there at the start of the battle. They fought the Persians for many days, up until the point that a Greek traitor showed the Persians a route around to flank the Spartans and get around the pass. However, that took some time. King Leonidas, upon hearing this, chose to stay. His 300 soldiers chose to stay, along with several hundred other Greeks, stayed to defend the pass, and several thousands of them left in order to go back to their homes, to their city-states. King Leonidas and all those that stayed were killed by the Persian army. Now, the Persians win the battle, clearly. They massacred the Spartans and those Greeks that stayed after finding a passage around. King Xerxes marches on Athens and burns it to the ground. However, those thousands of Greeks that were able to escape were able to go back and fortify other city-states and come up with a plan in order to stop the rest of King Xerxes and his army. It provided valuable time for the Greeks to get their act together to stop the second invasion. Now, this painting you can see here does a much better depiction of the Spartans in their heavy armor, which they would have actually worn at the battle fighting against the Persians. This is also the point in time where you may have heard of a phrase known as "come and take it," which in Texas is quite synonymous with the Battle of Gonzales. But when King Xerxes had first come to ancient Greece, he had asked the Spartans to lay down their weapons, and they simply replied with, come and take it. Now, of course, they said it in Greek, not in English, but the translation is the same. And this leads us to our third section of the notes, and that is the Battle of Salamis. And this is a large-scale naval battle that happens in the second invasion. Our essential question is still the same, right? Who were the Persians, and in what ways did their expansion, their invasion, impact the lives of those in ancient Greece and the politics of the city-states? The Battle of Thermopylae is portrayed in a Hollywood film known as 300, and the Battle of Salamis is portrayed in a Hollywood film, 300, The Rise of an Empire. Now, while it's great because it has historical elements and helps put a storyline and imagery to the events, there are historical inaccuracies to it, and there are also very intimate scenes in those movies which are not appropriate for the general audience. So at the Battle of Salamis, King Xerxes is expanding his army into ancient Greece, and he comes into combat with the Athenian admiral known as Themistocles. Now, the Athenian admiral Themistocles is leading the Athenian navy and a collection of naval boats from other navies and Greek city-states. However, the Athenian navy is the majority force within this battle versus King Xerxes and the Persians. And you can see in this the movie representation of Themistocles and the historical actual statues that were made of him, the historical bust. He also did not fight shirtless. He fought with armor. They were just playing shirtless for Hollywood effect. Now, the Greeks are using their naval warships triremes. This, of course, has rowers on it, and there's a giant brass ram that they're going to use to smash into the opponent's vessel. At this point, King Xerxes had already burned down Athens after his battle and victory at Thermopylae. He was chasing down the Athenian army and Athenian royalty and generals, trying to eliminate them from the face of the earth, and the Greeks were simply trying to not die. It was a matter of survival for them. And so in 480 BC, the Persian navy is drawn into the narrow straits of Salamis, which is just west off of Athens. You can see there we'll have some more blown up photos in just a moment. And so the Athenians are cornering themselves into some of the bays at Salamis. You can see there the Athenian navy makes up a large part. The Spartans have a few boats as well as the Corinthians, and the Persians are not only on the shores of Attica, they're sending their boats across in order to try and invade and destroy the remnants of the Athenian navy. Now, this is the strong suit of the Athenian armed forces, is their navy. And so historical paintings, you can see here some of the layouts. If they get in, they can push up into the bay and attack some of the other ancient Greek cities. So the plan was that Themistocles, knowing that they were going to burn down Athens, evacuated Athens, saving a lot of the forces that would have died defending it to fight on better terms. And so they backed themselves into the city of Salamis. They know that navy and naval warfare is their strong suit, and so they draw the Persians in. However, the Athenians are used to the rough waters of ancient Greeks. The Persians are not used to the rough waters. They're not used to how narrow the channels are. They're used to relying on sails and the wind to carry their vessels, as opposed to having slaves and servants and peasants and farmers row the boat and manually control which way the ship is going to go. And so King Xerxes' troops are drawn into these narrow passages. They are then smashed between the rocks and the Athenian fleets, and they destroy a third of King Xerxes' ships, thus putting him on the defensive because he cannot carry his army physically further into ancient Greece. This is going to end the Athenian defense and begin the period where the Athenians and the Greek city-states can go on offense to repel the Persians from ancient Greece. So take a few moments and answer our essential question: who are the Persians, and in what ways did their actions impact life in ancient Greece? In a brief paragraph, explain what occurred at the Battle of Marathon or Thermopylae and why those were important to Greek history. And that wraps up our lesson, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for watching. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Check us out on Teachers Pay Teachers, YouTube, Rumble, and the Kloeker Education Foundation website. We have a ton of educational resources there and a ton of free videos for you to watch on those channels. You can check out our other sources on the Athenian Golden Age, on the Persian Empire. We have sources on Alexander the Great and the Hellenistic era. Or if you're feeling brave and courageous like the Spartans, you can check out our next unit on ancient Rome, the rise of an empire. The Romans copy the gods, they improve the weapons, the strategies, the techniques of the Spartans, and build a bigger and better empire than ancient Greece could ever imagine, crushing the enemies and connecting the known world. It isn't mythology, it isn't legend anymore, it's history, it's the Roman Empire. All that and more is just a click away. I'll see you there.